to work. There it is. I'm with a company called Public Service Company of New Mexico. We're an electric utility serving most of the state of New Mexico and operations in Texas. I'm responsible for the MicroFocus suite of tools in use, LoadRunner, ALM, UFT, and SiteScope. I've been here about 8 years. I'm certified and published and generally a wonderful guy. At least my wife thinks so. Let's see if I get my screen to work again. There it goes. The issue we had is we have a couple of websites and we had no easy way to ensure the website was actually working correctly. We could ping it with the ops tools, but we had no way to verify it was actually responding to user logins and things like that. And the only time we'd find out about it is when the customer would call and complain. Really the wrong answer. So what we'd used LoadRunner to load test our sites, and so we knew how it was supposed to work. And we used a feature within SiteScope to use a LoadRunner script running in what's called web script monitor protocol. It's a protocol that's not really well known, but is really very, very powerful. Web script monitor, like I said, is part of SiteScope. It allows a LoadRunner script to be run against the site. The nice thing about it is you don't need a controller, you don't need VUGen, you don't need anything LoadRunner-like once you have it in the SiteScope environment. It can include text validation, so you can actually do script checks to make sure fields that you're expecting are populated with the correct value. Like the rest of SiteScope, it can generate alerts. It can be run 24/365. And another nice feature is it can collect logs for post-event review. If you want to see how its performance last Saturday morning for some reason, it's available if you set it up to keep those logs. So to do this, simple things, first off, your website has to be HTML. Something fancy or complex, LoadRunner web script monitor or SiteScope web script monitor is not going to work. It can support SSL. You do have to kind of talk to the LoadRunner experts about how to do that, but it can do it. To create it, it's pretty simple. You create your LoadRunner and your SiteScope versions need to be in synchronization. It means there are some versions where LoadRunner and SiteScope have to be the same, or at least at an equivalent or compatible version. Talk to your support vendor for it. That when you create your LoadRunner script, you then zip up the results. Anybody that does LoadRunner knows what this is all about. You bring it over to your site server, SiteScope server, and then you select the monitor you're going to use, which is called web script. Then you select your counters. Just like everything else in SiteScope, there are a whole laundry list of things you can measure. For us, we were only really concerned with status and duration. How long did the different pages take to open? We were worried about if the page was opening slow, we wanted to know about it. Each counter you select uses a SiteScope point. That is how SiteScope is licensed by points. So you pick the ones you want. As you can see here, I picked, just a couple. Total and status. Once you have your counters, you need to define what the rules are. So here we have our counters we selected, but there's question marks, which means it doesn't know is this response time of 90 milliseconds good or bad. So you have to teach it what the rules are because it doesn't know. Once you've established what the rules are, you can come back to this dashboard view, which you see, and you see lots of green happy check marks, meaning your status is good. This is all very user controllable. The other thing that could happen is when an event happens that triggers an alert, you can send alerts. There's a whole bunch of different ways. The alerts we've chosen to use are an email, and it can also send a text message. So you can see in this message, for example, SiteScope had an alert at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It sent to my company email address, my cell phone, and also my home email address. And basically, this is all text you can configure. You get to set it up for each different alert, set it up to be what you want. In our situation, we were concerned if the page took longer than 10 seconds to load. In this case, it took 26.5 seconds to load. That was an error. Then we also have this text down below where it talks about, this is text you can put in, and this is how we've configured our site. We test these sites every 3 minutes. We generate these alert emails if a test fails 3 times in a row, and then once an hour, so we don't bombard the support team with emails 25 times an hour. This is all configurable based on your needs. The other thing, if you set up to capture your logs, you can go back in time and look and see what was going on. In these slides, in these two screenshots, the first one in red shows how long the system was in error. And it was in error for a little over an hour, 0.1 hours. This tells me the counters. This one tells me my login, my logout duration. And obviously for the first hour, it doesn't even count because the site was down. But after the site was down, I still had some situations where it took longer than what my warning level was, which is 5 seconds, for it to complete the logout. So the page wasn't entirely healthy, but it wasn't really down. Final note you have, and this is just kind of based on experience, the more logs you save, realistically, no surprise, the more space you need. Because if you're running your logs like I do, where every 3 minutes, it will fill up a lot of file space on a server. Now they're small files, but there's thousands of them because they're running potentially 24/7. Next one is false alarms are bad. We use a process where we make sure it fails 3 times in a row before we generate the alert, because randomly SiteScope will fail, the network will fail, something will happen and you'll get a random failure. You don't want to create, call out the fire department unless you're really sure there is a problem. And that is the end of my presentation. Everyone, thank you very much for attending.
Wow, you knocked that out. So I think I've got a few questions because we've got some time, and I'm trying to see if it's for you or for Ogden. One was web script monitors are very powerful, great from a JavaScript enabled websites. Note that they require special SiteScope licenses. Okay, that was more, it wasn't a question, but.
Yeah, you do have to buy the web script monitor protocol, but it's really pretty cheap. I mean, we bought it just because we had some leftover money when we did the load runner installation.
Gotcha. And let's see, it's back to me on my screen. Let me just pop this back up. And the other question was, let's see, whoops, there we go. What about ETL for the logs with an effective roll-up strategy? How is that about SiteScope?
Well, I have not tried any ETL to roll it up. There are a bunch of very nice custom report or canned reports within the SiteScope tool to look at that data across things. I would assume you could, they're just CSV files, you could parse them and do ETL with them if there was some specific thing you wanted to do. I've not had the need, so I've never done it.
Okay, great. Ogden, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I've got a question for you. How long did the OMI migration take?
Well, the whole thing with the planning and everything, I would say it took about a year. Ultimately, when it started working, it took about 6 months, I would say, from day one to the production. Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what vendor provided the service management integration?
The service it was us. We did it.
So you guys did the whole thing, both the OMI and the service management.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts you guys have that you want to share with the group? Because we've got a few minutes. Any other feedback?
Well, I guess for me, the only thing I would leave with is this web script monitor is incredibly powerful and incredibly underutilized by people. Your ops teams can use this pretty easily off of the testing tool suite, or if they already have SiteScope in use for monitoring server health. This has turned out to be incredibly popular. I've got 6 different websites that I monitor with this tool, some internal and some external, and people rely on it because they're doing patching on Sunday night. No user really wants to log in and verify everything worked. They'll verify the site opened, but they won't really verify the working behind the scenes happen. If you have an LDAP failure, you typically won't find it unless you're using a tool like this.
Great. Ogden, let's see, I think I might have some. Oh, no, this one's for Helms. I did not clearly understand what we achieved. Let's come back here. With the SiteScope web monitor script, are we validating a particular component on the web page? How is it different from regular web HTTP/HTML testing we do?
Well, the nice thing about it is it can be automated, so it runs without human intervention after the script is created. It can actually pass in variables. For example, when we test our public-facing website for our utility customers, we actually log into the website and verify that selected components actually load on the subsequent pages that happen after login. That you can certainly do with a VUGen script, but you have to have somebody sitting there actually pushing the VUGen process to run. With SiteScope Web Script Monitor, it just runs by itself with no human intervention unless there's a problem.
More automated, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Ogden, one of the questions that I get all the time when it comes to implementing tools, the question here is how many people were involved with the OMI migration?
Rock, what you just answered here on the chat, yeah. There was actually 4 people on this migration, and all of the HP support, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you know,
and
you brought up
the escalation managers and all of the kind of things which that had to whenever we got stuck with support. So, yeah. But basically, on our end, it was 4 people.
Okay. Yeah, and I think sometimes it doesn't always get marketed that way. But I know when I've had customers and they'd want to know how many people does it take to make this stuff work, both from an on-premise customer perspective, it's usually more than just a half a person, and I think sometimes management didn't understand that, but it's really important to have people that know what they're doing and have people dedicated to the different areas that need to be monitored. So another question, Ogden, in the same spot by my buddy Kevin from Ohio. How did you switch the agents from OM to OMI quickly? Use primary manager?
Fortunately for me, I didn't have that many agents. I tried to follow the official guide with this manager switching with what is it called? This I won't remember what you just mentioned. When you create a secondary manager and just switch everything. Ultimately, this didn't work. So I just nuked the agents and I just switched them manually. But like I said, this was a few agents only. If I had to do 1,000 or 10,000 agents, that would have been a problem. That at this point, I would have to turn to support and figure out why this prescripted migration didn't work. But like I said, it was just a few agents, so I just nuked the configuration and switched them manually.
Great. Nels, here's one for you, the SiteScope question. Tell me where this has advantages over URL sequence monitoring.
Well, I guess I'm not familiar with what URL sequence monitoring is. From us, when we looked for a solution to handle this particular need to be able to pass in a parameter and verify the subsequent page opened correctly, there just wasn't an easy to use tool. We could have probably done it using 12 other tools, but we had the knowledge and experience with how Load Runner worked and using variables and parameters and all that kind of stuff. And it was really the simplest solution. I bet there is another way to do it. This is the solution method we used.
Another one related to that, reason for using the SiteScope web script monitor instead of BSM. I imagine it's probably the same kind of thing.
Same kind of thing. It's we went to the tool we could find in our toolbox of owned applications.
Let's see here. I'm kind of looking at the questions and or
Yeah,
feedback here.
Rock also found a question: how many CIs were there involved in the migration of OM? In our case, like I said, it was more or less demo environment, so we had about 300 CIs which we had to model from start. So the challenge was not to import that many CIs, it was to combine them and to create these specific propagation rules. In terms of CIs, there weren't that many, so this was easier than maybe in some of the customers' bigger environments.
So my buddy Tracy, who's been a long time HP OpenView trainer in the past, has a question: is OMW gone already, or are there still customers using it in production? What is the general urgency to migrate to OMI?
Well, I don't know who can answer that.
Support is going away.
Support is going away, but the product is probably stable. And if you're happy with it, I would say there is no urge. But sooner or later, something will break, and then
right,
there will be a problem. So
yeah,
I would say
I know.
Start planning at least.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's still a lot of customers that are just happy with the environment they have. It's getting the job done years after support has gone away. But like you said, if something breaks, they're stuck and have to move on to a new platform. So, well, we've got a lot more questions. We'll try to get them answered for you. Let me just close here. Get this out of the way. Whoops, going backwards. I had a few things here in my presentation. Where's my presentation? Oh, well, anyways, we've got a couple of SIG talks coming up. Let me see if I can find my presentation.
Okay. I've got to go to another meeting, but thank you very much for letting me present.
Thanks, Nels. So we have 2 more events coming up. There's a SIG talk on quality and testing coming up May 22nd. And on May 29th, we have a sponsored webinar from Micro Focus covering the latest from PPM, Product and Portfolio Management. So that's coming up. Our next SIG talk in the IT operations space will be June 21st. And our first presenter is the folks from eView that provide the mainframe integration to both OMI and to the CMDB environment. So we'll look forward to that presentation. If everyone can fill out the survey below, that would be great. That'll help us guide us on future events and things that you're looking for. I am looking for speakers throughout the year, and just like the ones you heard today, it's real world conversation about implementations using the Micro Focus tools in the IT operations space. So with that, I want to thank everyone for attending and talk to you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.